Welcome to Read a Book in 30 Minutes. Today, we're diving into Poor Charlie's Almanack, a timeless collection of wisdom left behind by the legendary Charlie Munger. This book takes a biographical approach, exploring the life and core ideas of Charlie Munger. Known as Warren Buffett's trusted partner, Munger was often called the mastermind behind the scenes and the secret weapon of Berkshire Hathaway. Despite his low public profile, his contributions and intellectual brilliance have been widely recognized and celebrated. A Poor Charlie's Almanack remains one of Warren Buffett's top 10 recommended books. He considered it essential reading for anyone seeking to understand the nature of business and success. The book is also highly endorsed by prominent figures like Bill Gates, Disney's former CEO Michael Eisner, and Bond King Bill Gross. This comprehensive work delves into Munger's unique approach to achieving tremendous success in the business world. It highlights his distinct way of thinking, his emphasis on business ethics, and his lifelong commitment to learning, lessons that continue to inspire us all. With such remarkable wealth and achievements, why was this billionaire's book called Poor Charlie's Almanack? The title was actually a nod to Munger's idol, Benjamin Franklin. Back in 1733, Franklin published Poor Richard's Almanack under the pseudonym Poor Richard, which included his famous quotes and essays. When Munger was approached about creating a book about his life and philosophy, he decided to honor Franklin by naming his book in a similar fashion. However, Poor Charlie's Almanack is far more than just an homage. It is packed with rich content spanning more than 500 pages, including Munger's personal biography, interviews with family and friends, rare photographs, key speeches delivered at Berkshire Hathaway, and 11 classic talks and articles he shared publicly. Today, we'll break down the book into two parts. 1. Charlie Munger's life journey. 2. The key life lessons that led to his success. Let's begin with the first part, Charlie Munger's life story. Charlie Munger was born on January 1, 1924, in Omaha, Nebraska, a small city in the Midwestern United States. He spent his early years there before heading off to college. The 1930s were a challenging time for America, with the Great Depression severely affecting Omaha. As a young boy, Munger had to take on odd jobs to help support his family. Thanks to the mutual support of friends and relatives, his family managed to weather those tough times. This early experience gave Munger a profound appreciation for the importance of family bonds and financial independence, laying the foundation for his lifelong pursuits, family and wealth. When it came to family, Charlie Munger's parents, though not particularly wealthy, were deeply committed to their children's education. They made it a priority to instill knowledge early on, and even Christmas gifts were often books. Charlie himself was an avid learner, so much so that he would often devour an entire book the same night he received it. This early encouragement to read and explore a wide range of topics allowed Munger to build a broad base of knowledge from a young age, and he consistently excelled academically. Eventually, he was admitted to Harvard Law School, where he graduated as one of the top students in his class. After graduation, he began his career as a lawyer in California, even founding his own law firm. Some of the projects he handled were so influential that they were later included in Harvard case studies. While Munger's professional life was impressive, his personal life was fraught with challenges. His first marriage ended in divorce due to irreconcilable differences, leaving him financially strained to the point where he had to drive a car he painted himself to save money. Adding to his troubles, his 7-year-old son tragically passed away from leukemia. For someone who valued family so deeply, these setbacks were devastating and nearly broke him. However, Munger wasn't the type to give in to adversity. Whether in good times or bad, he maintained a steadfast approach to solving problems. For instance, when a car accident left him with 90% vision loss in one eye, he didn't despair or wallow in self-pity. Instead, he calmly explored solutions like testing different reading aids and even considered learning Braille. Remarkably, his vision eventually recovered through treatment, a testament to his perseverance and optimism. After navigating these hardships, Munger met his second wife, Nancy, with whom he built a happy life, raising 8 children together. A few years later, he partnered with Warren Buffett, stepping into the investment world and founding his own investment firm. Compared to practicing law, Munger found investing, a field where rational judgment could lead to wealth accumulation, a better fit for his talents. Munger also had a distinctive perspective on investing. He developed a framework called the psychology of human misjudgment to identify common cognitive biases that often lead to poor decision-making. For example, he noticed that the human brain has a tendency to rush decisions to eliminate doubt, especially under stress. To counteract this, Munger avoided making investment decisions when he was under pressure, favoring a disciplined and rational approach. This extreme rationality led to significant financial success, but even Munger wasn't immune to market downturns. In the 1970s, when the U.S. stock market overheated, his firm suffered 2 consecutive years of losses, nearly erasing decades of gains. Despite the pressure, Munger held his ground and didn't sell off his holdings. By the 3rd year, the market rebounded, and his investments recovered. Realizing he no longer needed to go it alone, Munger liquidated his firm in 1975 and consolidated his funds into Berkshire Hathaway. Recognizing Buffett's complementary strengths and shared values, he joined forces with Buffett, becoming his right-hand man. Their collaboration transformed the company. Under Munger's influence, Buffett shifted from investing solely in undervalued stocks to acquiring high-quality businesses. One of their most famous investments was Coca-Cola, which Berkshire Hathaway began buying in the 1980s. Over the decades, this investment has grown to yield tremendous returns. Buffett once described his ideal business partner as someone smarter and wiser than himself, who wouldn't play the blame game when mistakes happen, and who would be generous with their time and effort. By Buffett's account, Munger wasn't just the best choice, he was an indispensable one. Buffett even said, "Charlie expanded my horizons, accelerating my evolution from starry-eyed amateur to sophisticated investor. Without Charlie, I'd be a much poorer man." Bill Gates also noted that Buffett's unparalleled success would have been far more difficult without Munger's guidance. Through his extraordinary intellect and character, Munger not only helped build Berkshire Hathaway's empire, but also left a legacy that continues to influence generations of investors. Though Charlie Munger is no longer with us, his principles and wisdom endure, offering timeless lessons on rationality, ethics, and success. Now, let's move into the second part and explore some of the core principles that guided Munger to his remarkable success. Many people have wondered how Munger achieved such extraordinary accomplishments. According to Munger himself, the answer lay in consistently applying a specific approach to problem solving. This approach can be summarized into 3 principles. 1. Using reverse thinking to eliminate actions you shouldn't take. 2. Applying multidisciplinary thinking to analyze actions you can take. 3. Going all in only at the right moment. While these principles sound simple on the surface, each carries profound insights. Let's start with the first principle, using reverse thinking to eliminate what shouldn't be done. To understand this, we need to look at Munger's unique way of thinking. Unlike most people, Munger approached problems from a reverse perspective. What does this mean? One example comes from a speech he gave at a Harvard graduation. The topic was how to achieve a happy life, but instead of listing steps to find happiness, Munger focused on actions that lead to unhappiness. His reasoning was simple. Once you know what makes life miserable, you can avoid those actions, and happiness will follow naturally. Similarly, when asked how to achieve success, Munger's response was just as unconventional. He said, "Avoid a bad marriage and never take drugs." At first glance, this might sound like a joke, but it's actually a core part of his reverse thinking philosophy. Reverse thinking is about understanding that if you can avoid bad decisions and poor outcomes, good things will naturally follow. Throughout his life, Munger rigorously applied this principle. He made it a habit to collect and analyze cases of failure across people, businesses, and governments, noting the reasons behind these failures. Before making any major decision, he would review these examples to ensure he didn't repeat the same mistakes. This approach not only helped him avoid significant missteps in life and business, but also allowed him to foresee potential problems before they arose. Take, for example, his early observations about economic crises. Munger identified a recurring pattern where industries on the rise would suddenly collapse due to what he called foolish spending. This occurs when unknown or misappropriated money floods the market, creating a false sense of economic prosperity. People see rising consumption and assume their wealth is increasing, unaware that this growth is unsustainable. Munger noticed similar warning signs in the U.S. housing market. Banks began offering low-interest loans to people with limited financial means, encouraging them to buy houses. As demand rose, so did housing prices, and both the banks and buyers believed they were profiting. In reality, this was another example of foolish spending, destined to collapse. Sure enough, this led to the subprime mortgage crisis, one of the largest economic disasters in U.S. history. In Munger's view, there are two categories of actions to avoid. One, repeating historical mistakes, such as those seen in economic collapses. Two, engaging in activities beyond your capabilities. To illustrate this second point, Munger developed the concept of the circle of competence. This refers to understanding the boundaries of your abilities and staying within them. Munger often shared a story about physicist Max Planck and his chauffeur to explain this idea. Planck's chauffeur had attended so many of his lectures that he knew them by heart. One day, the chauffeur proposed swapping roles. He would deliver the lecture while Planck sat in the audience. The switch went smoothly until an expert in the audience asked a technical question. The chauffeur, unable to answer, cleverly replied, "This question is so simple, even my chauffeur could answer it," and passed it back to Planck. Munger used this story to emphasize the importance of knowing whether you're the expert or the stand-in. If you can't competently handle the next challenge, you've likely stepped outside your circle of competence. This boundary acts as a protective moat, and crossing it can have serious consequences. Munger and Buffett exemplified this principle in their investment strategies. While managing billions of dollars, they focused on just one or two key investments each year. Their caution stemmed from understanding that stepping beyond their expertise increased the likelihood of failure. Buffett once said that their greatest skill lay in recognizing when they were operating at the center of their circle of competence versus its edge. This deep understanding allowed them to confidently turn down seemingly promising opportunities that fell outside their expertise. So the first principle is all about using reverse thinking to eliminate bad decisions. Avoid repeating the mistakes of others and don't step beyond your circle of competence. Now, how should we approach tasks that fall within our capabilities? This leads us to the second principle, using multidisciplinary thinking to analyze the things you can do. So what exactly is multidisciplinary thinking? This concept was one of Charlie Munger's signature ideas. In most cases, we solve problems using a traditional approach called specialization. The premise of specialization is that we can't master all knowledge, so we focus on becoming experts in one specific field. For example, a doctor may specialize in treating a particular type of illness, and a lawyer may immerse themselves in a specific area of law. But in Munger's view, this seemingly logical approach had significant limitations. The world is intricately interconnected, and problems rarely fit neatly into one category. Multidisciplinary thinking, therefore, advocates for integrating techniques and methods from various fields to solve problems more effectively. To illustrate this, Munger once asked a group of university students how they would raise the price of a product while also increasing its demand. At first, many struggled to answer, as it seemed to defy the basic principles of supply and demand in economics. Some students did come up with interesting ideas. For example, one noted that luxury items like jewelry often see increased sales with higher prices because people perceive them as higher quality. However, the answer that most impressed Munger came from a student who suggested using the extra revenue from the price increase to incentivize salespeople. With higher commissions, they would work harder to promote the product, naturally driving up sales. Munger appreciated this answer because it didn't rely solely on economic principles to solve the problem. Instead, the student incorporated ideas from psychology and management. In Munger's eyes, the most important thing in the real world wasn't categorization, it was problem solving. Regardless of which discipline a solution came from, if it worked, it was worth adopting. Munger's investment strategies embodied this philosophy. Unlike most investors, he didn't settle for a superficial financial analysis of a company. Instead, he took a comprehensive approach, examining the broader system in which the company operated. By integrating principles from multiple disciplines to address a single problem, Munger aimed to create what he called the Lollapalooza effect. The Lollapalooza effect describes the extraordinary results that emerge when insights or forces from different disciplines align and amplify one another. For Munger, this synergy wasn't just a tool. It was a defining feature of his problem-solving approach and a cornerstone of his success. So, how can we cultivate our own ability to think across disciplines? Munger shared two practical methods to get started. The first is to distill key concepts from various disciplines into mental models. Munger himself credited much of his intellectual toolkit to fields like physics, mathematics, and chemistry, disciplines rooted in rigorous logic, along with psychology and economics, which are highly practical. By identifying the most important ideas in these fields, you can build a framework for thinking that applies across a wide range of problems. The second method is learning from the best minds in other fields. Munger shared the example of a renowned surgeon who never made mistakes during operations. The surgeon's secret? A pre-surgery checklist he developed to review every critical step. Inspired by this, Munger created his own investment checklist, which he consulted before making any decisions. Most people try to solve problems with just one tool or mental model. As the saying goes, when all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. To truly understand the nature of a problem, we need to train ourselves to think in a multidisciplinary way. Once you've clarified your approach, the next step is deciding how to act. This brings us to Munger's third principle, going all in, but only at the right moment. Munger explained this idea with a story about Ted Williams, one of the greatest baseball players in American history. Williams achieved an incredible record of 400 hits in a single season. His secret was dividing the strike zone into 77 squares and swinging only when the ball landed in his best zone. Even if it meant risking a strikeout, he wouldn't swing at a ball outside his prime area because doing so would lower his chances of a successful hit. Munger believed this principle applied to life as well. Most of the time, you don't need to act at all, just wait. Every so often, a slow pitch will come along, perfectly aligned with your strengths. No matter your skill level, you'll be able to hit it out of the park if you wait patiently for the right opportunity. Warren Buffett shared this philosophy. In a business school lecture, he told students, "I can improve your financial outcomes with just one punch card. This card has 20 slots, representing the total number of investments you're allowed to make in your lifetime. Once you've punched all 20 slots, you can't make any more investments." Buffett explained that if you were limited to only 20 investment decisions, you'd approach each one with extreme care, dedicating more resources to opportunities that truly mattered. This careful approach, he said, would significantly improve your results. As one of the world's most accomplished investors, Munger abandoned the fast-paced trading of hedge funds early in his career. Instead, he focused on making only a few key investments. He believed wealth was created by putting 90% of your resources into a great company and making just a handful of well-timed moves. Munger called this approach the art of patience. By waiting for the perfect pitch, you could avoid squandering your energy on frequent swings that left you too drained to seize the best opportunities when they finally came along. But how can we identify the perfect moment to act? There are two training methods you can use to sharpen your decision-making skills: the dual-track analysis method and the flight simulation method. Let's start with the dual-track analysis method. Munger suggested analyzing problems from two perspectives, rational and emotional. From the rational side, you need to identify the key factors driving the situation, such as macroeconomic trends or policy changes. Then, you combine insights from various disciplines to calculate the likelihood of success. On the emotional side, it's crucial to examine the subconscious influences that could lead your brain astray. For example, under extreme stress, people often rush into hasty decisions, or jealousy might push someone to act in ways they normally wouldn't. By combining rational analysis with an understanding of emotional biases, you get what Munger called the dual-track analysis method. Most people tend to approach decisions from only one perspective, either purely emotional or purely logical. Rarely do they consider both simultaneously. This method reminds us that every problem is likely more complex than it seems at first glance. Now, let's move on to the flight simulation method. This method is inspired by how pilots are trained. Few professions demand the level of skill and composure required to fly a plane, where even minor errors can have catastrophic consequences. But there's a paradox. You can't become a competent pilot without flying a real plane, and you can't safely fly a real plane without some level of competence. The solution? Flight simulators. Pilots spend extensive time solving simulated problems as if they were real, honing their skills without real-world risks. Munger believed we could adopt a similar approach to train our judgment. For us, the best simulators are case studies. He advised us to read journalistic accounts, especially those analyzing complex situations. As you read, imagine yourself in the decision-maker's shoes. Ask yourself, how would I handle this? When would I act? What tools or methods would I use? By consciously applying both the dual-track analysis method and the flight simulation method in your everyday life, you'll be better prepared to act decisively when real opportunities arise. As Warren Buffett famously said, "Be fearful when others are greedy, and greedy when others are fearful." Many people struggle to fully grasp this idea, but Munger's methods make it clearer. After filtering out bad decisions through reverse thinking, strengthening your perspective with multidisciplinary insights, and validating your approach with dual-track analysis and simulated practice, you'll have the confidence to act boldly, even when others are hesitant. Take Munger's investment in a local newspaper, for example. Everyone around him doubted the decision, arguing that the industry was in decline. But Munger was convinced that while most newspapers would disappear, one would remain as the dominant local source of news. He saw enormous value in this information gateway and continued to increase his stake. Eventually, his persistence paid off, yielding significant profits. When you act, you need the confidence that you're making the right move. This confidence doesn't come from blind courage, but from careful preparation and the wisdom to act decisively at the right moment. And that brings us to the end of today's discussion. Let's recap what we've covered. In the first part, we delved into Munger's life story. His wealth wasn't inherited or gained through unethical means. It was the result of thoughtful and strategic investments, making his journey a valuable reference for anyone aspiring to build wealth. In the second part, we explored Munger's key philosophies. For most decisions, he followed 3 principles. 1. Use reverse thinking to eliminate what you shouldn't do and stay within your circle of competence. 2. Seek out the fundamental theories from various disciplines and integrate them into a multidisciplinary framework. 3. Train your judgment with dual-track analysis and flight simulation, ensuring you only act at the most opportune moments. Finally, if you're wondering about the source of Munger's extraordinary wisdom, it's no secret. If you ask anyone familiar with Munger, they'll likely give you the same answer: reading. There's a story that illustrates this perfectly. A young man once met Munger for breakfast. Arriving on time, he found Munger already seated, having finished that day's newspaper. The second time, the young man arrived 30 minutes early, only to find Munger still reading. By the third meeting, the young man showed up an hour ahead, only to watch Munger stroll in with another paper in hand. The two sat reading quietly until their scheduled time. Munger carried a book with him almost everywhere he went, once saying, "As long as I have a book in hand, I never feel like I'm wasting time." Okay, that concludes our exploration of Poor Charlie's Almanack. Charlie Munger's wisdom has left an indelible mark on the worlds of business and rational thinking, offering lessons we can all apply to our own lives. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more great books.